Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. In this one, I want to talk about the history of Jain Zar, also known as the Storm of Silence and Phoenix Lord of the Craftworld Eldari's Howling Banshees Aspect Warriors. Now, like many of the Eldari Phoenix Lords, much about Jain Zar is shrouded in mystery, but we do have a glimpse of her past identity and the trials that brought her into her position today. Born to the name Feraythil on the world of Adafron shortly before the fall of the Eldar, Jain Zar's early life was a complete contrast to the wondrous one which had been shared by many in the now all but destroyed Eldari Empire. Adafron had been rocked by demonic incursions following the fall, and Jain Zar's only family, her brother who had decided to raise her, was sadly killed by the demons who swarmed over it. This forced Jain Zar to survive on her own, always moments from death, until she eventually came across another survivor called Iliathin, who had been living in a temple to the Eldari gods for some years. Iliathin too had a brother, but he had been forced to kill him after the latter was possessed by demons, and was then pursued until he found his sanctuary in the temple. Initially, Iliathin shunned Jain Zar, but after surviving an attack from the Drukhari, the two formed a bond. Iliathin also chose to rename himself Azumon after the god Aziyan, and he agreed to take Jain Zar on as his disciple, having seen the lack of discipline she displayed in dispatching the Drukhari, and they both left the ruins of Adafron behind, eventually forming the first of the Aspect Warrior shrines, the Shrine of Azure, upon a barren world of the same name. Azumon would eventually become known as the Hand of Azure, the first of the Aziyani Phoenix Lords, who would then go on to train each of the Exarchs who would themselves become the first of the other Aspect's Phoenix Lords, with Jain Zar being one of them. However, jumping back to the story, with the path of the warrior now open to all Eldari, the Shrine of Azure began to produce the first Aspect Warriors, and Jain Zar was chosen to become the first of them to serve at the side of Azumon as an Exarch. Jain Zar quickly became a passionate Eldari sword maiden, famed for her speed and ferocity, eventually adopting the mantle of Aziyar, the Children of Azumon. This title called on them to spread their own teachings across the stars and to eventually found the shrines of the other warrior aspects. It was during this time that the first aspects were formally created, taking the specialties of their founders as their tradition. Those Eldari who wanted to follow this new path learned at the feet of their master, and they in turn assumed the mantle of Exarchs before spreading throughout the galaxy, building great shrines on the craft worlds and ensuring the skills of the Azure could be conserved for all time. Once her own training was complete, Jain Zar travelled the webway extensively, perfecting the abilities of her devotees and leading ever more Eldari along the warrior path. Soon enough, there were shrines practicing her arts on every major craft world, shrines that she still frequents to this day, nurturing her spiritual descendants and honing their lethal abilities. Of all the Phoenix Lords, Jain Zar remains the most devoted to the shrines of the warrior aspects throughout the craft worlds, travelling to all but the most remote via the labyrinth corridors of the webway. In fact, she has been known to disappear for centuries at a time during her travels, but she always returns, and her shrines maintain a constant vigil for their deadly mistress. It's worth taking a quick moment to look at the legendary war gear that Jain Zar bears in battle. In addition to donning phoenix armour that is almost invulnerable as it is ancient and invaluable, Jain Zar also wears an iconic Banshee mask, aptly called the Mask of Jain Zar. This is the first and greatest of all Howling Banshee masks, and is capable of amplifying her warcry into a devastating barrage that completely robs the mind of any who hear it. Some have even suggested it can liquefy the victim's brain, but few have ever been fortunate enough to witness it safely. In one hand, Jain Zar wields Zai, also known as the Blade of Destruction. This long, elegant polearm is a truly historic weapon for the Eldari, and is one of the few bladed weapons to survive the fall of the Eldar, crafted to such a superb level of artisanship that it allows it to remain light in the hand while it whirls around Jain Zar with deadly speed. Coupled with Zai is the weapon Janus Mor, also known as the Silent Death. This triple-bladed throwing weapon possesses sharpened edges that were said to be forged in the anti-flame of the warp. As such, black fire licks around its keen surfaces while it makes an elegant loop through the air, leaving decapitated bodies in its wake before returning effortlessly to its mistress. Now, let's return to the timeline. In the year 838 Millennium 41, during the campaign that became known as the Pyre of Kiliak's Bane, Imperial Xenologists began to plunder buried Eldari artifacts on the maiden world of Kiliak, inviting a devastating retaliatory assault from the nearby craft worlds of Beltan and Ulthwé. Jain Zar, accompanied by no fewer than 100 of her Howling Banshee disciples, slaughtered and incinerated the entire Imperial force, scattering their ashes to the winds in retribution for their assault upon the Eldari's ancestral culture, and reminding any who attempted to do the same that they would share an equally decisive fate. Sometime later, Jain Zar took on the task of hunting the Chaos Space Marine Talos Valkoran, the commander of the First Claw of the 10th Company of the Night Lord's Traitor Legion, all due to a vision by Eldari seers who foresaw that a prophet of the 8th Legion would unify the Night Lords and lead them against Ulthwé in the future. The prophecy suggested that Talos' attack would kill so many of the Craftworld's population that it would be beyond its ability to recover its losses. For Jain Zar, the response was obvious, and when Talos' warband of Night Lords began to lay waste to an Imperial world, they were ambushed by a host from Ulthwé looking to kill the Soul Hunter before he could become a threat to their species. In the ensuing battle, nearly every member of Talos' warband was slain, and he himself became embroiled in a desperate duel with Jain Zar, who had chosen to lead the Aspect Warriors of Ulthwé personally. Jain Zar and Talos exchanged deadly blows, and Jain Zar herself received grievous injuries during the duel. However, her prowess was unmatched, and she eventually turned the tide on the heretic Astartes' commander. However, Talos did not die quietly. He lunged at the Phoenix Lord one last time, clutching a prime grenade that detonated, killing him and almost killing Jain Zar. Aspect warriors from several shrines rushed to her aid, but the Phoenix Lord's crippled and barely conscious body was seized upon by the Night Lord's Chaos Dreadnought Malkarian, who crushed her with a titanic blow from his Dreadnought fist. The forces of Ulthwé eventually carried the day, and Jain Zar's armour was taken back to the temple while what was left of her body was given proper rites. However, Phoenix Lords never truly die. When one passes, a new exarch from that aspect is selected to take up the mantle and identity of their new leader. Consequently, Jain Zar was reborn once again to lead and guide her warriors in defence of their shrines and the Eldari race. Jain Zar's next appearance was during the frantic battle of Beltan, where the Mask of Slaanesh and her ally Skarbran led a demonic incursion against the craft world, killing huge swathes of the population and leaving an almost mortal wound on the craft world that it still struggles to cope with to this day. However, Jain Zar and the Eldari were once again victorious thanks to the efforts of the Inari faction, which Jain Zar soon dedicated herself to due to her shared conviction in their concept of rebirth. In fact, she went even further, fully embracing the power of Yanid, the Eldari god of the dead, and becoming reborn as an even more potent warrior and leader. Since that moment, no other Phoenix Lord has championed the cause of the newly risen Inari like Jain Zar, and she fights with a determination like no other, not only to save the future of her own people, but perhaps that of the entire galaxy.